Here today we have Jerem with us from Datatek. He's going to talk to us about cyber liability. So I do want to do a brief intro. Jerem and I have known each other for quite some time. I've been able to work alongside him on the professional side with what he does for about 7 or 8 years now. I mean, in my previous law firms and things like that. So
right. We kind of followed you around, didn't we?
That's right. That's right. No, Jerem's great. What they provide is obviously a full IT comprehensive solutions, as well as on this side of the cyber liability. You guys have a lot of information and knowledge on how to protect companies from these types of issues that we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, we're actually going to jump right into it. I'm excited. I didn't even say this, but Jerem's been doing what he does with his partner his partner's been in it 15 years, and then you've been in about 11 or 12 years, just about that. So
that's about right.
A lot of experience, small business, a lot of professionals and professional services they work with. And so those are some of the more highly regulated and some with a little more maybe even confidential information. So you have to be very astute and very keen on how am I protecting this confidential and private information. So we're going to jump into it right here. See if I can get my slide to go with me here. There we go. Maybe not. It's always fun. Oh, am I going the wrong way? Looks like it. Jerem's here with me, so that's the good news. It looks like I was all the way at the end. All right, everybody, here we go. As always, disclaimer, what we present today, you actually need to know what's right for your situation, which means we need to know your specific facts. Everything here today is general. We'd love to help if you have questions. My information and Jerem's are on the front page. So if you need either person's help, give us a call. We'd love to help. Beyond that, I like to give a legal update. A lot of employers have been calling and asking me, hey, a lot of, can I make the vaccine a mandatory requirement for employees? Or on the flip side, we've had employees call and say, hey, my boss is saying, hey, I got to get this vaccine if I'm going to come to work. The answer to that question, is it legal, is yes, with a few exceptions. And the exceptions are here on the slide. But one of them is if you have a true religious reason for not getting the vaccine. There's a lot of things that you have to unpack for that, but that's one of the qualifications or exceptions. The second is if you have a disability that would prevent you from getting the vaccine. Usually you have to present something from a doctor in order to have that be a credible source. So for instance, people have come and said, my doctor, I have an underlying lung or heart issue. There hasn't, they don't know if that's going to be an impact on me for the vaccine, if I get the vaccine. So my doctor says I can't do it. I've seen that happen quite a few times. Now, an employer can still force or require the vaccine. And this slide goes through it in a little bit more detail. The EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, goes through it in great detail. But if the employer believes that there's a direct threat, if the person does not get a vaccine, a direct threat of harm to others' health and safety in the office, and it's not just direct, but it's a significant risk of substantial harm. There's other factors to look at in looking through whether that's reasonable. Some things the EEOC has said, though, is, hey, if this person can be isolated 6 feet away from other people, there can be mask wearing, then that probably will mitigate a lot of your issues, unless you can then, as the employer, present good cause to show that, no, even if we did that, there still would be a direct threat. So in other words, yes, vaccines can be mandatory, but there are some exceptions. So interesting stuff. It'll continue to evolve as time goes on. I just thought this was a fun article, so I'm not going to go much into it. But if everybody remembers El Chapo, he was put into a maximum security prison in Mexico, 2015. He broke out. Well, his wife was one of the critical pieces of how he broke out, including I found she bought property next to the jail so they could build the tunnel.
Oh, that's right.
That was interesting.
Yeah,
so,
that was.
Anyway, she just agreed to federal prison, 10 years, and she agreed to forfeit all of her assets. And one of the things, and will be subject to an interview regarding all of her assets. And I just thought, I wonder how that's going to go.
We'll just see how the movie is.
That's exactly. Honestly. I'm excited for that movie. The last thing that dovetails into what we're going to talk about today is recently in the Senate, and I'm not talking about the Arizona, I'm talking at U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate, they passed a bill on cybersecurity, cyber liability. And a lot of it is addressing the threat of what they perceive as the threat of China. China's actually, I know, reached out in their own news media and said, hey, this this is just to scare people, all this stuff. But in this bill, it talks about, hey, we're putting money towards our infrastructure for semiconductor processing and building creation. We want to also prevent any government devices from having TikTok on it. And I think you'll have some fun, interesting things to say about TikTok and other things that we talk about today. And then the other one that I thought was interesting, I've never personally bought a drone, but I know people do. If it's a drone manufactured and sold by companies backed by the Chinese government, then those are no longer going to be allowed to be in commerce. So
yeah, and we'll see what happens with DJI, because they are known to be a supporter or work with the government.
Okay.
And then as far as the semiconductors go, here in Arizona, even we have Intel and we have TSMC coming in.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have 2 or 3 different semiconductor fabs here in Arizona.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here.
Could be a lot of good things for Arizona, is what you're saying. Huh, I like that. Well, what I want to do right now is Jerem has 5 tips. We're going to go through 3 scenarios after this. So, but Jerem has prepared 5 tips, and as he'll say to you, these are the tip of the iceberg for these tips. There's a lot of information to unpack underneath these, but if he was to give you 5 tips on how you can help yourself prevent cyber liability or recover from the liability that you may face, these are the things. So I wanted to turn time over to Jerem to walk through these, and then we'll go through the scenarios.
Thank you, and thank you for having us here, Tim. I want to start out with kind of a precursor.
Sounds like a lawyer.
yeah. Oh, I spend a lot of time around lawyers.
Yeah.
So the cybersecurity liability side of it, it's a very broad topic, and when you're talking about security and convenience, they don't work well with each other. Oftentimes, security makes employees and employers' lives a little bit more inconvenient, a little bit more difficult.
Interesting.
And there's a lot to it. And what we try to do is find that middle ground. And that middle ground is different for every company. Some businesses aren't willing to take any type of inconvenience in their workflow. Yeah. And other businesses, they want to go all out. So all of these things are customizable to your needs, just like at your firm. So I'll dive right in, and I'll try to cover these on a simple level, because like what Tim said, you can spend a lot of time just talking about one. Yeah. The first being backups. Backups need to be purpose-based backups. And what I mean by that is a lot of companies will assume that, hey, I set up my backups a year ago, they must be working still. Or I set my backups up for my files, so I'm good to go. But what they don't think about is their email. They don't think about their contacts, their calendar. They don't think about critical software that's running on old Windows XP machines. And are you backing those up so that when they do die, you can restore those, and now you're not without, AC in your building or card access systems.
Well, all of us too, I think, to some level think, hey, I've got access to that online, right? If I'm using Microsoft or Gmail, and what we talked about a little bit earlier is that's not a backup.
It's not a backup. Yeah. So Microsoft will keep your data for up to 30 days after it's been deleted, but they're not backing it up. Yeah. And in most cases, they're not taking versions of your data either. Yeah. So
that's not what they're there for.
That's not what they're there for. Yeah. And they have outages. Just a few weeks ago, nobody could send an email. Yeah. Because Office 365 went out for a couple of hours. So it's important to back up that data yourself so you have full control and not rely on somebody else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The next one would be cybersecurity insurance. We insure a lot of things. We insure our lives, our cars, our homes. Yeah. We insure anything that's of value to us. And it should be the same with our business. Huh. We insure our business in 2 ways. One, through our procedures, through what we do.
And we're talking about that, I think, on number 4.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We're going to talk about how we can insure our businesses through our actions. Yeah. But we also insure them through insurance.
Sure.
So that when there is a data breach, when there is compromised data that goes out or comes into your network, you have an insurance policy in place to help pay for the legal fees. Yeah. Which you're going to talk about near the end, and how expensive that really can be. Yeah. From an Arizona state standpoint, the state can come after you for those things. Yeah. And the insurance covers you for loss of revenue because of downtime. Yeah. And so many other things that they'll help you cover. Cybersecurity insurance really is a vital point to it.
Cool. We're here at Brian Holt Anderson Insurance today, actually hosting this webinar. So they are a resource. I had a webinar with Devin last month as well on not this issue, but different types of insurance needs. So anyways, I think number 3 will be interesting too, because it's a big one, but how do you we'll break it down really simple.
So having a involved IT support is critical. There's a lot of companies that will do a break fix approach, fix things as they break, respond when there's a compromise.
Well, what's the problem with that?
Well, the problem is that it's going to take them and you a lot longer to fix a problem because no one knows really what's going on because no one's been involved the whole time. Yeah,
so instead of there being a roadmap to say, oh, this is where it probably broke, we're now trying to reconstruct. And if it's like most places I've seen, the people that are jerry-rigging the thing together, it's not usually an easy thing to track down and fix because you can't find the problem.
It's not, because you have to go through all these Band-Aids.
Yeah.
So having an IT support group to go through the vernacular for you and help you understand these systems that can be complex and how they all merge and work together is important. It's the same on the legal side. I mean, I don't know the first thing about legal much of anything. I didn't go to law school. But when I have an issue, I go see.
How the different parts of the contract work together, or how your employee handbook can work together with your employee agreement and other things. Exactly. Except this isn't and just like law, like you said, it's a different language. I mean, IT, it's a different language. So I'm excited because that will jump into some scenarios where we'll talk about how involved IT support can really prevent a lot of cyber liability.
Exactly.
I like this next one too, because I think it goes to what really goes from also not only cyber liability, but protecting your most critical assets. I'm excited about that.
So policies for data handling. And this is a big one because most of your vulnerabilities don't really come from the systems in place, but they come from the people.
So when you say that, you're saying, hey, the outside hackers aren't looking at, it's much harder to penetrate Microsoft, or it's much better, Google if you're hosting through Gmail or whatever. So then you're talking about, it's not that system that's the problem. It's usually the user, which is your people or yourself.
It's somebody getting a phishing email and not being able to identify that as a phishing email. And then they click on a link, they sign in with their email password, and now their email is compromised.
Oh, interesting.
So it's the user that is a really big vulnerability.
Interesting.
Having policies in place for data handling is a very wide topic, but briefly it covers how files are accessed, when they're accessed, from where they're accessed.
Well, and I think to your point too, I know something that you've helped with, not, again, different places I've been, is policy should have not only say who should access them, but you can create, if you have the system in place, you can actually limit people's access. So then you're actually preventing a whole problem from even starting. If you just have that policy or plan in place, hey, this person doesn't even need access to these files or this information. So that never even becomes compromised if something does happen, right? So
that's what we refer to as the zero trust relationship.
Oh, okay. Sounds terrible though.
Well, it's rather painful to start.
Wow, we really don't trust you, but
I get it. It prevents a lot of problems. And being able to track what is done to specific files, being able to say, hey, I'm missing this entire folder. Oh, well, it turns out so-and-so moved it accidentally to another subfolder. So being able to track
that's
down
where you go to the
things,
audit log, right?
Exactly. Having those systems in place saves a lot of time when you're dealing with a business that's just trying to work. They're just trying to function.
Well, let me back to purpose-specific backup solutions. On the same, you just said somebody moves a file. It happens where people delete files.
Yes, entire folders.
And if you don't have a purpose-specific backup for that, it's not like Microsoft holding on to that stuff for you. You very well could lose it if you don't have that backup happening. Anyways, the audit log also goes into, so number 4 is policy for data handling along with proper audit log creation/retention. I'll say that's a huge one from the litigation side. We do a lot of non-compete work, non-solicit work, business partner disputes. When you have the proper audit log and you can see, hey, employee XYZ, before they left, they took all this information, they downloaded all this information or deleted all this information, it is a slam dunk versus what a lot of people are left with, which is, I know I had this information and I think they have it, but now you're trying to chase it down or find a way that you can then prove that they took it, right? So that's huge.
And that does happen, not just with employees, but employers with partnerships.
Exactly.
We actually had one scenario where a partner literally took hard drives out of a server and walked out.
Oh, wow.
those things happen, and you need to have systems in place to prevent things.
Yeah, or at least know it, so then you can, again, it makes it a lot easier on the back end when you're litigating. So a huge cost prevention, I'd say, on that side.
So the last that we'll cover today is the purpose, or the purposeful and proper use of firewalls.
Yeah.
A lot of companies will put a firewall in and, hey, we're good to go because we have a firewall.
Yeah, we got one in place, we're set. It's going to do what it's intended to do by itself.
Has it been configured correctly for your needs?
Yeah.
Does it have intrusion prevention and intrusion detection? Those being, can it detect an active threat in your network?
Yeah.
And can it detect and stop a threat from coming into your network?
Both things you want.
Both things you want,
yeah.
But both things require a lot of energy and throughput.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We talked a little bit earlier about this, but it's like having any safety protection. It's like having a seatbelt in your car, but not actually clicking the seatbelt. So hardware, or the firewalls are critical if we use them right, but if you don't, it's basically worthless, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and firewalls are hardware-based and software-based.
Okay.
Each computer has its own firewall, and each network should have its own firewall as well.
Gotcha. Okay, we'll see. Learning new stuff every day.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the things we like to do is we like to run through some scenarios, because in the end, most of us think in stories. All the things we just said are very heavy. The 5 tips, you can say, oh my gosh, I'm going to die if I have to think through all that information. So let's break it down into scenarios. Jerem has a wealth of experience with dealing with scenarios, so he won't give any client information or direct information that would compromise any clients. But these scenarios are not unreal. These are scenarios that have happened in one form or another. So one of the things I want to do is just read this scenario for the viewer audience here. A small accounting firm recently has grown significantly and hired 4 new employees. It keeps all of its client documents on a server. Because of the sudden growth, there's been no policy put in place regarding digital safety measures. One employee downloads a corrupted file onto the server from an unknown source, thinking it was from a client. Happens all the time, or can easily happen. These hackers, I've seen a lot of phishing emails that come through, and it looks like a client or somebody else, but there's one letter off in that email address.
Yep, one letter off, or maybe the signature looks a little different.
Yeah.
Or they're spoofing it, and the employee just isn't aware of how to look at the real letterhead of the email to see who really sent this email.
Yeah.
So once again, training employees and employers is important, because they really are another firewall.
Yeah. Well, let's start with this. What's the risk here, though? I mean, it happens. So what, right?
So
what's the risk?
So the risks can be really small. So let's say that they click on an email and it takes them to a web page where now they type in their email credentials.
Okay.
But they have 2-form authentication set up.
Okay.
So we're not too concerned.
Okay.
But in this scenario, they downloaded a file.
Yeah.
And then they put it on your file server.
Sure.
That file that they downloaded and now uploaded to your entire network could be a Trojan virus that could be relatively harmless, or it could be ransomware. In the worst,
that's terrible.
In the worst case, it's ransomware.
Yeah.
So your risk is not being able to work.
Yeah.
And if you don't have backups, not getting any of your data back.
Well, let's talk about this too. A small accounting firm, there's ransomware, which is, hey, we're going to take this and hold it until you pay us some money. Or there's the second, which is a similar type, where the Trojan is, hey, we're just going to cull a lot of information from you. So as an accountant or law firms or professional services, even in any business, you might have social security numbers. You might have credit card numbers, personal, dates of birth, all these things. So even if the hardest thing is, you may never know.
You may never know
until the actual issue happens, and then you're the source. Yeah. That's the hard part.
And or they may take your data from you.
Yeah.
Not encrypted on your server, just take it.
Yeah.
And then say, hey, we're going to release this, or we're going to sell it if you don't pay us.
Yeah. Wow.
So
that's not fun.
The risks can be high. I'm not a fear monger.
Yeah.
Most times the risk isn't your entire business coming down.
Yeah.
But it affects you.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
So how can you how should you react when something like this
happens? What should you do?
So let's stick with the ransomware scenario.
Okay.
So say the ransomware came in. Well, you have an IT support group that you can call, and they should be there. They should know about it already, honestly.
Yeah.
From their audit logs that they have.
Yeah.
But if they don't, then you're calling IT looking for some help. And the first thing that should happen is isolation of the compromised systems. So sadly, everybody has to stop working.
Yeah.
The file system, the file server has to be disconnected from the network.
Yep.
And we need to find the ransomware. We have to find the infection.
Sure.
Once the infection is taken care of, restore any files that have already begun to be encrypted, because the ransomware doesn't just happen like this.
Oh,
it takes time for it to encrypt files.
Interesting.
So you can catch it early on.
Interesting. And well, if you don't have an IT team, then you're basically,
you don't know until you come in the next morning.
Everything's already encrypted.
Hey, we can't get to anything.
Well, and that goes to, again, the purpose-specific backups as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can remove that stuff from the or
you should isolate them. Isolate them, remove the infection, get your files back, and then you can bring everything back up.
Or have a separate file database that you're going to work from for a temporary time or whatever.
Spare.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. So I like these solutions when you have IT. If you don't, then basically just kiss yourself goodbye for a little bit is what it sounds like.
In some scenarios, yeah. Businesses do close their doors when they can't get any of their data back.
Yeah, man.
So to prevent this, though, it can be rather easy to prevent this.
Yeah.
One, the backups.
Let me just say this.
Yeah.
This is not an if scenario. Even for my small business,
it's a win.
It's a win. I mean, these are all things that are happening almost regularly for us. Even there's these emails, there's people that are always trying to, I mean, I've represented people that do cybersecurity full time as, very heavy. There's full-time jobs dedicated to cyber hacking.
Yep.
I mean, people dedicate their lives to hacking. And so you may be small or insignificant, but that doesn't mean that you don't have liability for this. I mean, it literally is a when, not if.
If you have systems that face the internet, which we all do.
Yeah, hopefully if you're in the 21st century.
Then you are at risk.
Yep.
Because most of the time, it's not a person behind a screen trying to get into your system. It's a piece of software that somebody created to just go out and get in anything they can.
Man.
Which is why firewalls are so important.
Yeah, interesting.
So
firewalls, what should you have done before?
Exactly, preventing this from happening.
The policies in place. So we talked about these new employees came on, no policies in place. Two-factor authentication is critical so that if somebody does get your email password or your login information, it actually shouldn't be they can just now get into your system. It would go into, hey, they need to get to your phone as well.
Exactly.
So that would authenticate. On the back end for the Trojan or any other malware, you would have one, you already have your firewall. You have your IT team that should be able to detect this early. You have your backups. Right.
Yep.
Man. Okay.
Yep. And
I feel smart today on this stuff. Maybe I should get into this.
You've got it. So, and with the antivirus, a managed antivirus that is constantly on and sending notifications to an IT team is better than one that just runs a scan every night.
What does that mean? Managed IT virus? You just gave a difference
I gave
between the two of them. Yeah. What is that?
So a managed antivirus program is one that is managed by a company or an individual that is being alerted to, weird traffic going on.
Interesting.
So the minute there's a virus detected, because it's looking at all incoming traffic, it notifies us
regularly. Almost, it's happening all the time. It's not just at night, like you're saying.
Exactly. It's all the time. So we can really stop things before they become a big problem.
Yeah, it's huge. Interesting. Well, when I'm running my business, I know the last thing I'm usually thinking of when I'm trying to do something for a client is, I wonder if my antivirus is running, every 24 hours, or is it just running,
You
whatever.
just don't think about it.
Well, yeah, you don't have time. So I love this. That's good.
You shouldn't have to.
Well, that's why I'm talking to you. So exactly. The risk is real.
Yeah.
I'm just checking my time. We're doing well. Okay. Scenario number 2. Your company allows employees to work from home. Some of your employees like to go to Starbucks and work from there using the public Wi-Fi instead of always sitting at home. What are your risks?
So the biggest one would be man-in-the-middle attacks.
Okay.
What I mean by that is I've done this. I've been the man in the middle.
Oh, geez.
And you can ask around.
Well, let's hear it.
It's rather fun to do.
Yeah.
Sitting in a Starbucks or wherever it is, public library, college, campus, you can catch the metadata and the cookies from other computers that are on the network.
Not hard, it sounds like.
It's not hard at all. There's free software. There's an app on your phone that'll do it.
Oh, geez.
It's really easy to do.
That's crazy.
And it's fun. When done correctly.
For the appropriate purpose.
Ethically.
Exactly.
Yes, of course. So that's the biggest, because you're on your computer signing into, maybe it's Office 365 you're signing into.
Anything.
Maybe it's your bank
account. I was just gonna say.
Maybe it's the company's bank account. Maybe you're doing a wire transfer.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, and they're catching all that data.
Holy cow. Yeah.
So that's the biggest risk.
If you're on a hotspot versus on the public Wi-Fi, are you mitigating that to some extent?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so you're not on the same network, so they can't catch all that same information.
I mean, if somebody really wanted to, they could set up a fake cell phone tower and they could get your data too,
Oh,
which happens all the time on bigger levels.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyways, so the man in the middle is the most obvious.
So literally, the man in the middle is you are sitting there trying to do something on a public Wi-Fi, and they can catch anything and everything that you're doing at that time. Any metadata.
Yeah.
And what is that? So obviously, in my mind, that means you have full exposure, right? They have everything that you like your bank account information.
Yeah, and well, in fact, I've done this before where I've actually remoted into a computer on a public network and taking control of their system while they're sitting there, or they walk away.
Yeah.
They use the restroom.
Yeah.
Now you remoted in and you're going through their files.
Yeah, without them knowing, because as soon as they're back. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Again, this is a lot of work from home. This I gave the Starbucks example, but a lot of people even working from home, their networks aren't secured. They don't have passwords.
Most of them are not secure.
Yeah. They don't have passwords. They don't have anything in place, or they're bumming off Wi-Fi from their neighbor even. Sometimes, I mean, I know that happens quite a bit actually. So that's something to really be careful of. So again, this to me goes to, well, your risks we just talked about, pretty huge.
Yeah.
And it's almost, we talked about a really targeted approach with software last scenario where people had to click on things and do all. This is simply, you just are on your computer.
You're just doing what you normally do.
Yeah, you're not clicking on anything fishy.
Nothing fishy.
Yeah. So you gotta be careful of that. So what should you do? It sounds like employee policies in place. There should be some discussion with the employees about, hey, never use public Wi-Fi, obviously.
Yeah, so there's a few different approaches to solve this problem.
Yeah.
The biggest is not having bring your own devices policies in place. A lot of companies rely on their employees to provide their own computers, and that works for a lot of them.
Sure.
But now your IT needs to be involved so that we can get in and set up those personal computers to be safe enough on the network, because we're going back to the zero trust environment here.
So the firewall is one thing. Does that help at all in this scenario or no?
It helps in this scenario if your firewall is acting as a VPN server.
Oh, okay.
So if you're on a company laptop or a personal laptop, which is where I was going next, if you're in a public Wi-Fi or even at home, you should be connecting up to the business's network with a VPN.
Gotcha.
Which is a short way of saying it changes the language of your traffic into something that others can't read. It encrypts it.
Okay.
So having a VPN in place is the first thing you should do to prevent this from happening.
That's good to know. And or maybe I think there's also educating client or employees, like you said, on, hey, don't access public Wi-Fi. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that you shouldn't be doing.
Or
anyways.
if you have to, don't go to the bank accounts.
Yeah.
Don't do anything that's really going to open you up.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, here's another fun thing is a lot of people save their passwords, right? Google. Yeah. So even if you don't go into those, if somebody's remoting into your, they can easily go to your web browser and say, oh, look at this.
You can look at all their saved passwords.
Jeez.
Doesn't take long.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right. So that sufficiently scared me. So that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. All right. Scenario number 3. You're so busy running your growing business that you do not always have time to update your computer software and antivirus protection. You also do not have the time to run systematic backups for your business's critical information. So tell me what risks do you face? We've gone through some of these, and then secondly, really, what should you do?
So we get the call when a business has made that step, which every business hopefully makes of success.
Yeah.
Of, hey, I am so busy running my business now that I don't have the time to do all these band-aids and all the break fix approaching.
Yeah.
And we go in and oftentimes they'll say, yeah, I've got a backup, but they haven't looked at it in 9 months.
It's a thumb drive or something.
Or it's a thumb drive or something, and they'll lose it, or you're backing up to a hard drive that's on site in your office,
so it doesn't
nowhere else.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that are overlooked simply because you're an accountant or you're a lawyer, and that's what you do.
Anything. Construction, anything.
Yeah.
You're trying to run a business that's successful, not manage your IT.
Yeah. So there's a lot of lost time that is created when one, you either aren't sure what you're doing or you're doing it incorrectly.
Yeah. Yep.
And time is really the most valuable asset to all of us. That's what we want. That's why you run a business.
That's true.
I mean, you want more time.
Yeah. You could be working for somebody else, but you've chosen to go into this, arena of running a business because you thought there's autonomy and time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Having a dedicated IT, either in-house or a company like us, really frees up your time so you're not thinking about these things.
Well, let's talk about that. The last question here is it expensive? You guys provide a service. You can be as good as an in-house IT service, or as limited as, hey, we'll do these things for you, on an ongoing basis. One of the things I like that you guys do though is your approach is very proactive.
Yes.
You can be reactive, you can fix the problems, but you, with your clients, you say, hey, we're not here to fix issues, we're here to prevent them.
Exactly. Yeah, this just happened the other day where a hard drive threw an error. Oh. And I know that hard drive is going to fail. It could be today, it could be in a year, I don't know. We're just going to replace it.
Yeah.
So it's those type of proactive approaches. Being involved in your network helps prevent downtime.
So essentially, instead of the employee coming to work, the hard drive fails, you guys get called, then you have to order a hard drive or figure out an interim solution, which could take a day depending on what needs to happen there.
Yeah, and emotions are high, and
I need this now. Yeah,
exactly. So we prefer the proactive approach. We also don't believe in a ticket system. We believe in having one dedicated technician for the client that they can call, that they can reach out to whenever they need something.
That's awesome.
And we also visit every week on site.
Yeah.
A lot of IT guys are, we're kind of seen as back room guys,
remote
on a computer. I'm sitting here in my swim trunks or whatever, doing my work.
Not today. I see the khakis.
Yeah. But we also like that approach.
Yeah.
We like face-to-face. We
More
like
personal.
seeing people. And as far as expense goes, you really get what you pay for.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. But it varies. We can be as involved as you like. We can completely take over everything, which we do in most cases, or we can take over just the backup and the intrusion and a few other things.
Yeah. So a lot of times I know what you guys do is you have a monthly fee or a monthly cost that you say, hey, this is how many hours this covers and costs. We're going to be on the back end doing all these things that will prevent you from having any risk or exposure. And if something does happen, we're here to get you up and running as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's a known cost so that you're not surprised by some crazy bill every month. That's the approach that we have found works. People like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And we like it as well.
I agree, 100%. We've been very satisfied and really enjoy you guys doing what you do. There is a fun little piece on the back end. The legal compliance arm of this is there is a law that says if there's a data breach and you know of it, I mean, that's one of the issues that always happens. You have to know.
You have to know.
But there is a law that says you have to tell clients. And so this is a little bit of information on that. Notifications must be made within 45 days if the breach involves more than 1,000 Arizona residents. And so some of the things you guys have seen or heard recently is like, hey, this was a couple of years ago, but Home Depot got hacked on their credit card stuff. Well, think about your client base. It's not unlikely if you have a product or service even that you're going to have more than 100 or 1,000 Arizona residents that are affected by that. And so that is something that can, for sure happen. And we've talked about all these preventative measures that you should take to prevent this. This is where insurance comes in, and this is where what we help with on the legal side can come in as well. So again, there's a lot to do with this. We're really excited to learn those 5 tips. These are tips that are not hard, by the way. If you get the right people involved, like Jerem and his company, these things are not hard and they're not expensive, and they will save you so much time and money. So I'm a big proponent of that. I really appreciate that you coming in today.
Of course. If
you have specific questions for either me or Jerem, this is our information here. As I said, really appreciate Jerem coming in. We do like to open it up a couple minutes to, if you have a question to write in, feel free to do so. Me and Jerem will sit here and just wait. And if nothing comes in the next minute, then we'll just say, thank you for showing up today. And this webinar will be posted online. We'll make a link available so that if people who couldn't see the slides today or that weren't able to catch it, they can get on and see this. So thank you very, very much for attending. We'll look to see if we have any questions, and if not, we'll close it up. Oops, probably everybody. There we go. Unless you're a wicked fast typer, which I probably didn't give you time to, we're going to go ahead and close it. We appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. How many times?